The following episode contains language and descriptions of violence and self-harm. It may not be appropriate for all listeners, but it was my life. Discretion is advised.
I went through a traumatic experience a few years ago where my wife nearly passed away, was pronounced dead at the hospital, and then lived. And that changed me. And I said, "Hey man, how you doing?" And he says, "I'm not good today. I just had to bury my 26-year-old son, and it's been the hardest day of my life."
Watched my cousin get killed and watched it on the news. Couldn't make a phone call for 3 days. And no joke, the exact same day I saw a rapist get stabbed, and right on the same tier as me. And the cops literally pulled him off. And I remember thinking that day, my mindset, I was like, this rapist just walked out of here after getting stabbed, and my cousin got killed and is in a closed casket funeral. What up, what up? Welcome back to another special episode of Roll Call with Chappy. As always, I got some good ass treats for you guys with these guests, and we are actually at my man Tyler Hall's house. I actually did a little chasing to get this guy on here. You know what's crazy? I actually just saw some of those reels that you post on your podcast, dude, and they're incredible. He has a really cool podcast. I'm gonna let him introduce himself to you guys right now, and then we're gonna get into his soul story of how he got to where he has, and how you built this whole network and everything that you got going on right now. So introduce yourself, tell them where to find you, and then let's get into it.
It's a pleasure. I'm Tyler Hall. I'm a child of God. I'm a father of four children, beautiful children. I'm a husband to a loving wife. I've been married for 14 years. And I do a podcast called the Roller Coaster Podcast, where I interview people who have been through deeply traumatic life experiences, things that you and I and most of the audience will never, ever have to experience, God willing. And it's totally changed my life. And the reason I started it is because I went through a traumatic experience a few years ago where my wife nearly passed away, was pronounced dead at the hospital, and then lived. And that changed me. So I'll forever describe my life as 31 years before the accident and everything after, because there was a fundamental shift in my way of being, in my just perspective on life, in my relationship with God, in the way that I spend my time, in the way that I cherish relationships. Everything changed. And so I look forward to just being able to share that today with you and with the audience, and hopefully at least one person can find it useful for their own life. For sure. And obviously I love the way you introduce yourself, bringing up God and the family first. So that's, what I'm most proud about and everything as well too. It's crazy. And I want to get into how you had this mindset, but like myself, when bad traumatic stuff happens, I'm like, F God, why would he do this? That's why I didn't believe in God for 40 years of my life. I was in maximum security and watched my cousin get killed and watched it on the news. Couldn't make a phone call for 3 days. And no joke, the exact same day I saw a rapist get stabbed, and right on the same tier as me. And the cops literally pulled him off. And I remember thinking that day, my mindset, I was like, this rapist just walked out of here after getting stabbed, and my cousin got killed and is in a closed casket funeral. She was All-American at Duke, like the only other person out of my family that made some of themselves. And I had to deal with that in prison forever. So I was like super, super resentful towards God. We'll get into that story at the end, because I wanted to, even before that, get into like growing up for you. You have a crazy, insane network, very successful, and I always like to get into people's different stories of how they got to where they did. So let's break it back a little bit, like how'd you grow up, and then where are you from and stuff? Yeah, so, I think there's a lot that you can say when you talk about your childhood. And so anytime I describe my childhood, I try to think about things that would be useful for people to understand about my life. One was I had the most incredible parents ever. And still to this day, I think these are the two most amazing people that exist, right? My mom and my dad.
That's awesome.
I was born very Orthodox LDS. Okay. We can get into that. I still have a deep desire and belief in a lot of the ideology from the LDS Church.
Yeah.
I also have things that I think are challenging in the church. And so, I've separated those into two buckets, and I try to focus on the side that I find to be good and useful for me and for my kids and my relationship with my wife and with God. I was a 4-sport athlete. I was that guy in high school. I just loved it. It was everything that I ate, slept, and breathed every day was sports. That was foundationally, I think, what gave me a lot of the characteristics of who I am as a man today, right? Came from playing sports. As I really reflect back on how did I get to where I'm at today? I served a mission for the LDS Church at 19.
Really, where at?
California, Southern California, San Bernardino, shout out. Top 3 homicide rate per capita.
Yeah.
As a 19-year-old young white Mormon boy, to be thrown into that lion's den was insane.
I would imagine they probably talk trash to you when you're riding your bikes around there, right?
Yeah. I mean, you had 2 different camps, right? You had people that hated us, and then you had people that wanted to protect us because we were men of God, and not a lot of in between, right? Mm-hmm. So it was quite polarizing to be walking around the streets of San Bernardino at 8:00 at night.
For sure.
We saw some things. I experienced some things at a young age there that have really, I think, helped define my life. I got back from my mission and was married 5 months later when I was 21. Okay. My wife was 19. This is pretty usual in the LDS Church, right? To get married young and start a family young. And about 3 years later, we started having children. And so that's really my upbringing. It was an amazing upbringing. Maybe too good to an extent.
Why would you say that?
I think that perfect parents can ruin children.
This is good. This is what I live for now.
And I've seen that in my family. My parents would be deeply hurt to hear that, by the way. And they did the best that they could, but they were perfect. Everything that they did was perfect, right? My dad was successful. Very spiritual. It was family prayer, morning and night. It was Bible study, morning. I mean, it was the prototypical Christian upbringing, right?
Yeah.
And where did the kids end up? Well, all of them ended up leaving the church and losing their faith at one point. And some of us have made it back. But for the most part, it ended up being damaging. And
How many siblings did you have?
I'm one of 5.
Okay.
And I'm not blaming my parents for that. We're all unique individuals, right? And that's important to note, that I tell my parents all the time, look, this is not your fault at all. You did the best that you could. But as I have grown up and as I've started a family, I've started to recognize that my imperfections are a gift to my children. They're not. It's not a bad thing that you and I have been through some things in our life. Our ability to relate to and empathize with and have understanding for our children when they inevitably make mistakes.
Because they will.
And not just our children, but everybody around us,
for sure,
is a gift. And so we have to recognize that our lives are a finely orchestrated story that was put together by an all-powerful God. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you have no understanding as to why this is happening to me. Why me, God? But man, now that I've come out to the other side of all of that, which we'll get into, it's like, thank you, man. Thank you for doing that to me. Thank you for allowing me to have those experiences, because my ability to relate to and understand the people that I care about the most is elevated beyond a place that I ever thought I would get to in my life.
What's the contrary on that? Because it's funny, we talk about that with my wife all the time, because she grew up the same way, Bible study in the morning, and like mine was the opposite, I dropped out of school at 13 years old, and she's like, so raising our kids now, because like now she's worried that they're going to grow up like, with a silver spoon in their mouth and stuff like that. And that's where we kind of worry too, because hers the same thing. Bible study, so the second she goes to college, it's drinking, partying, and it's doing all the stuff that you can't. So it's like, where do you find that level right there? And then what do you do now with your parenting and kids? Like, do you just kind of do a mix of how your parents was to how do you think it is now? And also one more question, where do you learn how to do all your parenting stuff? Because I always thought growing up, you think your parents have like this parenting handbook and it teaches them how to be parents, It kind of having kids gave me a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, but just forgiveness for my parents. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you realize like, when your kid's doing something and you don't know what the fix is, and I'm like, oh shit, you realize like, dude, my parents didn't know everything. Like, so I give them a little bit more grace on that. And like, where do you get I get a lot of advice from podcasting and stuff now. So like, where do you get that from? And then how do you parent your kids right now with that stuff?
Man, the only advice that I would share with parents is to not take advice from other parents, because every parent-child dynamic is incredibly unique. And there is no handbook, but that's by design. It's supposed to be this way. The handbook for me is, dear God, please help give me the understanding and the ability to see into the hearts of my children so I can understand what they're going through. And allow me to use my own experiences that I've had in my life to guide the way that I would interact with them and the example that I would set for them, and help me set an example that is in alignment with what you would have me set, right? And that's how I do it. Like, every decision with my family is deeply contemplated by God.
I love that.
And I think that's the only way.
Yeah.
There is no handbook, right?
For sure. Leading God clearly never stray you away from that. So after that, when did you start making money after mission, or what was your plan after mission? Did you door to door like a lot of the other guys do?
I didn't do the door to door route. I had a different plan in mind. So
Did the mission change you a lot? Because I know my brother-in-law, it's the same thing, like completely changed him after his mission. He was a different person, changed what he wanted to do.
Yeah, it did. It did. And it, I thought I was going to be an attorney going on my mission. I was, already sort of studying to do that at 18, 19 years old.
He was in BYU law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got home and I decided that's definitely not what I want to do. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to build businesses. And so as I'm going to school, at the same time, I'm flipping cars. I'm buying and selling cars. I'd saved up like $7 or $8 grand before my mission. And so I used all that money to buy a car. And next thing you know, 2 years go by, I'd bought and sold like 150 cars.
That's what Tommy Mello started out with.
Was he flipping cars?
Yeah.
And, there's something about that you just learn how to sort of
wheel and deal and,
make deals and double your money. And, a lot of it is done in cash. And it's kind of a slimy, grimy business, like really when you think about it. But at 21 years old, like you're not thinking about that. You're just thinking,
sure.
I made $1,000 here. I made $500 there. And, all of a sudden you do 150 cars and popped up at 22 years old. And I had a couple $100 grand in cash.
Wow.
And so I think that foundationally gave me the breathing room to kind of go, well, this is not like, what do I want to do? I'm married, So what
you
do I
guys
want to
attending
do?
church still?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay.
Still very active in the church at this point. And so, I knew I wanted to build a company in the automotive space, and I knew I wanted it to be software. I had some experiences when I was flipping cars where I realized there was a need to build better technology for the automotive industry. But I also knew I was 21, 22 and didn't really know what I was doing. Like, still like a kid at that point. Sure. And so I joined 2 early stage startups for the next 7 years. One of them was called Domo. It was raised almost $1 billion of venture capital. It was the highest funded SaaS company in history up to that point.
What does SaaS even mean?
Software as a service.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
So software that you would license to other businesses.
For sure.
And then that company went public a few years later. So as an earlier employee in that business, like that was a meaningful event for me. And then I joined another company called HireVue that raised about $120 million and ended up selling to a private equity group for over $500 million. So, I got lucky, like sort of identifying this problem, joining 2 startups, both of them like rocket ships to the moon. And
can you break that down a little bit for me too? Because seriously, I'm a little slower too. And I always say this, like it's the only thing a disservice you do is if you don't say how dumb you are, because like everybody else here has the answers to problems I don't have. Like when you say when the company went public, like what does that mean for you working there? And then the other one says they just got bought up by private equity. What's the difference?
It's a good question. So those events, right? Like when you're in a company and you own stock, a private company, the stock is.
So you had part of that when you were on there?
So
wow.
I had equity.
How do they give you that when you're so young too?
just competent, capable. They saw the value.
Knowing the right words. Yeah.
Come in, create the value, show my worth inside the business, and then negotiate equity as part of my comp package.
Cool.
And so in a private company, equity isn't worth anything unless there's what's called a liquidity event. Meaning you take like this ownership structure and somebody gives you a bunch of money to own the business, right? So one way to do that is you take it public, and then shareholders, you and I and anybody that invests in the public stock exchanges, can buy portions of that business, and that creates liquidity. And so the owners in that business now all of a sudden, based on how much they own, they get a check in that event, right? Same thing if you sell the company. If you sell the company, we sold it for $511 million to the Carlyle Group, and I had a sliver of equity in that thing, not a lot, but enough to where it was like there's $500 million coming in, right? So it was meaningful. And so that creates some economic opportunity for me at 27 to step out, build my own car dealership for the purposes of incubating my software companies. And then
testing it out and seeing if it works, and then you have a dealership right there that it
proof
works
of concept. Yeah. 1 year later, we sold the dealership. We spun out what was known as Drivably, which was my software business. Drivably became the first ever company in North America backed by Porsche, which was like an amazing opportunity for me because I'm obviously a raving fan of the brand. And then we went on to sell that company in October of 2021 to a public company. Where I was the majority shareholder in that business.
Was this California still?
This was here in Arizona, and the company that acquired us was in New York. So.
Wow. I was a car-based guy too. I don't know if you know that. That's the only job I ever worked at. I sold cars when I got out of prison.
Amazing.
So, all right, what do you do after that? Then you sell this company, and then what? What's your next?
Yeah, man. So this is when the story...
And how are you feeling right then? Are you just feeling like, damn, like life's pretty easy? Like I got this entrepreneur thing figured out? Like, what's your mindset back then?
Yeah, I'll give you a little view into how I got there, right? Like, I think a lot of people, they hear the Reader's Digest version of the story and they sort of go, man, that was easy. Like you did that pretty fast. Like that must have been like a piece of cake. You know, it's like, no, it was like sleepless nights, becoming physically ill many times because of the amount of just stress that you were dealing with every day, day in and day out, from investors and employees and customers and partners.
And wife, how was your wife during this too? Was she just a supporter? Was she like, are you ever home?
Yeah, I mean, no, I wasn't, but bless my wife, man. She, you know, I think it's really difficult. It may be impossible to build a company without a supportive spouse.
For sure.
And so like, you know, we had to have that conversation early on. Like, hey, here I am, 26, 27, making $500,000 a year, super high paid, young, you know, rising star in the space that I was in, going, hey, we're going to go to zero for a few years. And we're going to like risk it all. And we're going to invest every dollar to our name into this thing. Like that takes a special kind of person to be like, okay, I trust you. Right. But that was always my wife. And one story that really showcases that is we're getting ready to sell the company. It's now, call it March of 21. The buyer that we were under LOI with, so that we had signed an agreement that we were going to sell to them, calls me and says, hey, I'm so sorry to inform you, right? Mind you, my wife and I had been planning the next house and the next cars and the next vacations and all the stuff. Like you would spend years like poor, right? I get a call from this guy. He says, I'm sorry to inform you. And as he says those words, I get a notification on my phone from Wells Fargo. And it says, you have a negative bank balance.
What?
So in the same moment that I'm being informed this deal is not going to happen, the company is out of money, I get a notification from the bank that I'm at a deficit, right? So all of a sudden, in an instant, I go from, my life is amazing, this is going to work out perfect, we're going to be rich, we're going to do whatever we want, to like, it all just came to a head. Boom.
Yeah, like I just asked you had this entrepreneur thing figured out, dude. Yeah.
Boom, right? So I get this news. He says, hey, we're not going to be doing the deal. And here are all the reasons why. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Like,
what were the reasons?
Let's talk about this. It's
just business type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing due diligence. They're looking into the company, and they find things in the company that to them, the way that we acquired customers, as a private company, totally fine. As a public company, violates TCPA compliance and all kinds of scraping laws and things like that. And so they said, this is a big part of your revenue. We can't touch that. So I hang up the phone, and man, I remember this moment like it was yesterday. I remember taking a deep breath and hanging my head and just like, man, that's it. Like, I just spent the last 4 or 5 years of my life building this thing, and it's gone. And I have this woman in the next room over that has sacrificed everything. What am I going to tell her? And so I say a prayer, I take a deep breath, and I just, okay, you got this. And I walk out to her, and she says, hey, what's going on? She can tell I'm distraught.
For sure.
I say the deal's off. And like man, bless my wife.
Yep. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Like a stone cold killer. She looks at me and she says, so what? I'm like, wait a minute. Did you hear what I said? You know, the whole thing, all the stuff, the houses, the car. Like,
you're worried about telling her, like, that Range Rover is not coming anymore and all this.
It's done.
Yeah.
It's over. We're going to lose it all. She says, no, I heard you. So what? And it's like, just grabs me, pulls me in. You know, like, you always want to be the strong one.
The dude, yeah.
You never want to let your spouse down. But man, when you have one that when you're at your lowest, who goes, hey, I got us. I got this. Come here. It's like, you can't take that for granted, you know?
You got me crying, yeah.
Special. So I frame that up because the next part of the story, man, you're going to realize, like,
how'd the business go negative?
Who my wife is. So, okay, the silver lining, deal gets back, because the pressure was taken off of me, gave me the ability to get this deal back on the rails. And 6 months later, we close it. Okay, so here I am to your question. How do you feel? 30 years old. I'm rich. I have everything I could ever have hoped for after months earlier thinking my whole world was over. And I'm at the pinnacle. Like, life is perfect. 3 kids, healthy, amazing relationship with my wife, with God. Everything's perfect. And 5 months later, I'm in Houston, Texas, and I jump on an elevator. I'm at a meeting, and as the doors are closing, a man sticks his arm in the elevator and jumps on. And he presses floor 10, and I'm going up to floor 13 or 14. And elevator starts going up, and I say, hey, man, how you doing? And he says, I'm not good today. I just had to bury my 26-year-old son, and it's been the hardest day of my life. You know, and you don't expect that. You just expect, I'm good. How are you?
For sure.
So I'm like, whoa, I'm kind of taken aback, almost speechless. What do you say to that?
I'm just going to say that, yeah.
Just say, man, I'm so sorry. And he said he was a good kid. It was a total fluke accident, and I'm just really hurting today. And he said, man, his door's open. I remember giving him a hug, and I said, I'm so sorry, man, and God bless you. And he said, I don't know who you are. I don't even know your name, but let me just say this. He said, if you have a family, if you have kids, man, cherish them really close because you never know when it's going to be their last day. The doors close, the elevator keeps going up. I break down. I'm just dude, I've been traveling. I feel like I'm not present ever for my family.
Yeah.
Like, it just really hit me. Like, man, like, this is profound. I call my wife. I tell her about this experience. Okay, fast forward 1 month. Now I'm in New York City, and I'm getting ready to go on CNBC with the CEO of the parent company that just acquired my business 5 months earlier. This is a big deal. We're at NASDAQ on Wall Street. I mean, this is a big deal. This is like every entrepreneur's dream.
And you're how old?
I'm 30 years old, 31 now.
Are they even saying something about how young you are being there? No. Wow.
No. And so, I wake up, we do a dry run on a Tuesday. March 1st, I wake up from a phone call from my mother-in-law, and she says, hey, I know you got a big day today, but something's happened to Brooklyn, my wife, her daughter. And she says, it's really bad. She's in an ambulance right now being rushed to the hospital. And I'm like, what happened? Do we have any issues? We don't know, but you should probably get home. So I go, okay, this is serious. My mother-in-law's a nurse. My father-in-law's a homicide detective. I mean, they're pedigreed to know, like, this is a bad deal.
Yeah. And to not overreact about that.
And so, I'm texting my assistant, hey, I got to get out of New York City. I need to get the next flight. What about I'm like, something happened to my wife. I got to get home. So I'm getting these updates from my father-in-law. Due to COVID restrictions, he's the only one allowed in the hospital. Bless his heart. And so the messages are, we just got to the hospital. I have these memorized, Peter. Like, it's burned on my mind.
I bet, yeah.
The next one is they just checked her into triage. They did an ultrasound and found 2 liters of blood in her abdomen. 2 liters is 40% of the blood in your body. You are dead when you lose that much blood. The next one is a photo of the whiteboard in the hospital, and it says ruptured ectopic pregnancy. She was pregnant.
Stop.
And I don't know what this is. I go to Google. I realize that in the majority of cases where this happens in the home, which it did, it's lethal. So I go from like,
how far along was she?
10 weeks. This only happens early on. It's when the baby's not growing in the uterus, it's growing in the fallopian tube, which is the size of a quarter, let's say. And if it gets too big and they don't catch it in time, it expands and it bursts the tube, connected all your organs, and that's it. So I learned this, and I'll spare you the details of my experience on the plane for 5 hours.
Oh, gosh.
The most hopeless I've ever felt in my life. I journaled how I was feeling. I have extensive notes. That was the only thing I could do to sort of cope with the situation. And the next updates are they just rushed her in for an emergency surgery, and for 4 hours, still in surgery. Well, we had delivered 3 kids at this time. And the total amount of time the doctor's in the office delivering a child is like 20 minutes, right?
I was going to say, mine popped out.
So 4 hours, like, wait, something's not right. And as I kept getting these updates, I'm expecting like,
she's out.
The next
good,
update,
right?
hey, it's all under control. She's stable. And it wasn't that. And so then I get a text message as the plane's descending into Phoenix that says something to the effect of, prepare yourself.
Stop.
She's not going to make it. And so, like, what do you do with that?
I was just going to say, what?
What do you do with that? And it's like her dad too, right? So there was this level of just like, man, here I am again on the road traveling again, and I'm not there for my wife, and I'm not going to see her take her last breath. It's going to be her dad that has to do this. So you have that thought, and then you have like, your whole life kind of flashes before your eyes.
Sure.
You start seeing things from we grew up together. I knew her since I was 5 years old, right?
No way, really.
So I'm seeing memories as a kid.
For
I'm
sure.
seeing memories from junior high and high school. And then when we first started dating and then engaged, and I'm seeing all these memories. And I'm trying to process, like, man, what is this going to be like? Like, she can't die. God knows that I can't do this alone.
For sure.
There's no way. And will I start asking questions like, God, are you there? What is this all about? Like, have I been a good husband? Have I been a good father? And I start this internal kind of dialogue. Well, we land, sprint through the airport, get to my Uber. 45-minute drive to the hospital, barely make it in time. They close the doors at 7 p.m. during COVID. I run to the elevator past the receptionist. She's like, sir. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm going. Go up to the second floor. I get to her room. And I'm expecting at this point that I don't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Is her body going to be there? Is her dad going to be there to greet me? I don't know. Well, I walk in the room and I see her laying there. And audibly, I hear the heart rate monitor is still beating. I hear the beeping of the heart rate monitor. And so I immediately have this kind of like, oh, okay, like I get one more moment with her before she passes. And I sit down at her bedside and I ask her father-in-law, I say, hey, or her dad, sorry, my father-in-law, hey, how's she doing? And immediately she erupts in this seizure-like reaction. Very scary, unlike anything I've ever seen. I'm running into the hallways and I'm screaming for help. They come in and they get her stable and, they tell us basically like, hey, basically say your goodbyes. It doesn't look like she's going to make it through the night. She just lost too much blood. And so that night, as you can expect, I'm sitting here, I'm staring at the heart rate monitor and my eyes are peeled open. And man, I would have these horrific nightmares where I would doze off. I was so tired, so mentally just drained.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to go to sleep. I wanted to like, I was just paranoid, right? I couldn't sleep. And I would doze off and it would flatline, boom. And I would wake up in a gasp and it would still be going. And then I would doze off and it would flatline. Just like this horrific night, as you can imagine it.
Yep.
Well, she makes it through the first night. On day 2, I wake up the next morning and I call on as many people as I can in a fast. I ask hundreds of people to fast with me.
Really?
And this is a ritual that I grew up doing in the church where you're calling upon God, you're giving, you're sacrificing something for 24 hours, and that's food and water, right? This is
water too?
Yeah, food and water.
Wow.
And so I ask hundreds of people, I say, here's how you do it. Please join with me in prayer. I need help. And man, you could just feel these angels come down. And be in the room. My wife's basically in a coma, unconscious. And the next night, her levels start improving. "24 hours later, we close the fast. And I kid you not, within an hour, she wakes up.
No way.
And she starts communicating. And her levels start improving. And, that was the first of a lot of miracles that we saw. And so, if anybody questions, was that a coincidence? Was that good fortune? No, it couldn't have been. This was God sending his angels down and saying, we have a plan for you. And this is not it. It's not your time. There's more work for you to do here. And, we've seen some of the fruits of that work. We had another child against all odds. We can't imagine our life without her. And, so my wife...
Real quick, sorry, I want to hear more. What are the conversations you guys have after that? And so I want to get into the gratitude, because what is when you probably tell her that they told her she wasn't going to make it, and she's probably thinking, holy crap, I just survived and I wasn't supposed to be here. Like, what are those next conversations like, and what are her thoughts, and how is she feeling?
See if I can do this one.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Usually I'm the one that cries, so this is different for me.
Going back to it.
Yeah.
One of the first things I said, do you remember when you had that seizure a couple of nights ago? What happened? And she said, I remember it vividly. I was dying, and when I heard your voice for the first time, it gave me life.
Stop.
And, it just helped her fight. It helped her realize, she knew that I couldn't do this without her. And I think she felt just the presence of God and these angels coming down to administer to her. And she had some experiences where she knew the lights were going out. They went out, and just being pulled back through, not yet. And so, those are pretty sacred experiences that I don't share too openly, but I'll tell you that, man, God has a plan for her and for her family. And, you would think that the rest of the story sort of goes like this. You would think it goes, well, she recovers, she becomes healthy, and our life turns into this blissful, beautiful thing. And she did recover and she did become healthy, but that led to maybe the most difficult 2 years of our life after that. I had a conversation with her after she became healthy about my views on the church. I had done a lot of self-reflection, as you can imagine, through this experience.
Of course.
And started questioning some things about my upbringing in the church, and it backfired on me. She did not receive it well, because in our church, there's eternal implications to separating and to not following exactly the path, right? And that created a lot of challenges in our marriage. And so what did we do? Did we come together during that time? No, I went further that way and she went further that way. And we couldn't have been further apart, to where we had multiple days and experiences where we said, is this our last day? I'm ready. Are you ready to be done? I'm kind of ready to be done.
Yeah. Very
logical conversations. Let's give it another day. Let's see. Let's just keep trying, right? And yeah, I went through, man, I don't know how much time we have, but I went through a lot of things that year that were in those next year to 18 months that were incredibly difficult and self-sabotaging. And I was further away from God than I've ever been in my life. And I about near ruined my life and my family's life and my children and my relationship with God. And by the grace of God, I was able to get through it, and we were able to come together. And our family and our marriage and that dynamic is better than it's ever been.
How do you guys rectify that?
Well, which part?
The part where you guys are talking about, maybe are we going to make it one more day, and she doesn't like that. You don't want to go with the LDS, and she wants to be more LDS now. And how do you say, okay, let's figure this out together?
Well, we agree to go do therapy.
Okay.
That was very useful for us, right? I think there's a lot of...
Who won also? What church you guys go to on Sundays?
I continue to go to her church,
Cool.
to go to the LDS church, but I also started going to Rock Point. So I was actually attending 2 different churches every Sunday. That's where I met Daniel.
Nice.
And, I continued to be as supportive as I could there. Mm-hmm. I just kind of kept my mouth shut when I would go to church, right? And, I had some things happen in my life. I made a decision that ended up becoming catastrophic for my marriage. And I thought this was going to be the end of it, where I got arrested and I went to jail.
For
a DUI.
Okay.
And that is not...
You don't look like most of the dudes I saw in jail.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when I found myself in there, I went, is this a dream? Like, this can't be real. This was not part of the playbook for me, right? Like,
for sure.
Very clean cut, like religious, spiritual upbringing, the whole thing. And I made a mistake. I made a big mistake, and I found myself in jail. I've actually never shared that publicly.
Wow, cool. Thanks for sharing that.
And so, but I felt like it's time, and it's useful to share that with you. And that was rock bottom. That was the first, my wife's situation. It's a different kind of rock bottom.
Of course. Yep.
This, from like a personal affliction, this was rock bottom. And there's not even a close second up to this point in my life. I was by the book, clean, not even a ticket on my record to boom, find yourself in jail.
In jail, yeah.
And so I have some stories from just being in there for one night, that at some point I'll share. Maybe I'll share some with you today. But I do remember one that I'll share.
Yeah.
I get called up to like the clerk or whatever that person is, mm-hmm. right? You're sitting in this like pit.
Yeah, pit.
Feels good to say this out loud,
yeah.
by the way. You're sitting in this like pit, and there's like 30 other inmates around you. And the clerk, they're calling one by one to kind of check you in, right? Take your mug shot, the whole thing. And so she calls me up there, and she's asking me a series of questions. And I'm just, by the way, I'm like dappered, buttoned up. Everyone else is
off the streets.
Off the street.
Yeah,
it's their 12th time there.
Yeah.
They're, just...
You're trying to just sit in the corner.
I'm just like, don't even look at me. I know what you guys are thinking. And so she calls me up, hey, Mr. Hall, so I go up there, and she asks me some questions. And one of them is, she says, do you have any tattoos? You probably know this. They have to do that to identify. It's part of an identifier, right? And so I said, yeah. And she said, can you show me it? Where is it? So I showed her. It's on my arm. And she said, can you describe what's in the tattoo? And I said, it's a family tree, and it's got each of my children's name on it. And I lose it. I start crying. Here I am in jail. I'm trying to be a tough guy, and I'm like, with the clerk, like, don't tell anyone I'm crying,
For sure, yeah.
And she goes, hey, this was clear that this was a mistake. The police officer actually said the same thing as he's booking me. He's like, dude, I'm really sorry I did this to you. It was a .055. Utah's a .05. It's the only state where I actually would have, it was just like, and the silver lining of it all is it all got reduced down to an impaired 1B, which is like drowsy driving. It all went away. Like it wasn't.
Of course, yep.
But this was part of God's plan. This was part of like, no, you're going down a path.
Yeah.
I need to check you. Like, you need to check yourself.
For sure.
So let's do this. Let's see how that feels.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that like I would never want to end up in that situation again. Yeah. He was right. And so, I tell that I'm telling her about my tattoo, and eventually I get released, and I was at a place in my life where, I shared how my wife and I's relationship was, the dynamic, right? That experience, that connecting experience of her just pulling me in. Man, we had gotten so far apart that my bright idea was, I'm just not going to tell her. She'll never find out. I'll just slide this under the rug. No problem. Right? Yeah. Great idea, right?
I was going to say, that would probably work out really
Great idea. And so...
You thought of that one all by yourself?
Oh, yeah. Came up a genius idea. So a couple weeks later, I'm traveling again, and I get a text message from my wife, and it's a photo of a letter from an attorney in Utah that says, "Hey, I want to represent your DUI case."
Oh gosh.
And my wife's like, basically sent the photo with a question mark. Like, please tell me this is like a mistake. Tell me this is wrong, yeah. Right. So I call her. The new rock bottom was that phone call. And the disappointment that she had in me.
I was just saying, her voice, you could probably hear it.
And just like, how did you get here? And yeah, I knew the full story, which was, hey, it's not what you think.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. But no one's going to like want to listen to that story.
Yeah.
And so.
Especially when you don't tell them, it's just already off the bat worse, you know?
Yeah. So that leads to her going straight to her father, who's Phoenix PD homicide detective, wrote hundreds of DUIs saying, hey, here's what happened. Well, how does that, And so I get home, that night or the next day, and I immediately go over to her father's house. I say, hey, terribly sorry about what happened. That was one of the hardest conversations of my life. Hey, I promised you that I was going to live and be a certain way with your daughter. And all these years later, like, I broke that trust, and I want to earn that back, right? Well, on my way driving home, I get a call from my dad, because he and my parents are friends. Remember, we grew up together, right? So they've been friends for a long time. And now that's a new low, right? You thought the wife one was low? Like, man, when your dad, your hero, calls you, and he says, I'm gutted at this news. I can't understand how you've gotten to this place in your life. And I couldn't either, honestly. But I continued to convince myself that I wasn't in a bad place. I was fine, That's how we justify it when we're going down these paths. I'm fine.
Or compare yourself to somebody else's life who's doing way worse.
Way worse.
Look what he's doing. Like, he's got kids already. Yeah, for sure.
And so, that came with, obviously, there was a lot of damage and disaster recovery that had to take place from that, right? I had to build trust again.
How did her dad take it after that conversation?
Man, I mean, just...
Did he kind of give you the benefit of the doubt like one time, or?
No, not at all. I mean, like, he meant immense words, right? Like, and I respect him a lot. And just like, like a level of sort of respect towards the fact that I came straight to him when I got home to have this conversation, right? Like, hey, I really appreciate you coming and doing this. And we're close. And, he let me know that this was completely unacceptable. And if it were to ever happen again, what the consequences look like then. Not only are you going to lose your family and your kids and us and everyone around you, but the legal ramifications of a second one, this is what that looks like, right? And so, he meant immense words, and, I appreciated that, but he never mentioned it again, not even one time. He never treated me differently.
That's good.
And I appreciate and respect the way that he handled it a lot, but yeah, so like coming out of that, it's like, well, how do you repair that? That's a new low for me personally. It's a low for our marriage. I thought my wife was potentially just going to walk away. Like, that's it. That's the last straw. And she didn't. She hung on, and we hung on, and we chose to fight for our relationship. And man, I talked about the gifts of imperfection. There's actually a book by Brene Brown called The Gifts of Imperfection that talks about perfect parents ruin children. And our therapist asked us to read that. Okay. And once we did, my wife sort of realized, like, you know what? This is all, not immediately, but this is all for good. This is going to help our kids. At least we have somebody that's made some mistakes in our marriage, sure. Right? Like some serious mistakes. And so, I'm grateful that I went through that and that we went through that together, because our marriage never would have gotten to the place that it's at today if we hadn't have had some of those really low lows along the way.
All right. So then what happens after the DUI? You're completely straight edge, or you a completely changed man, or
I've never touched alcohol again.
And how long ago was that?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just over 2 years ago. And so, yeah, I mean, it changed me a lot.
Putting that in perspective now, just seeing where you are, I'm just like trying to think, Dan, go through that 2 years ago, like where you are.
But again, you have to remember, Peter, I was still a pretty high level operator at that time, right? Like I was doing it. And I think outside looking in, people would have thought, maybe not had the exact same experience of me as they do today.
Yeah.
But they would have had an experience of me that was like, this is an impressive guy, right? So it's not like I was like, some like slumlord. It was like, I made a big mistake, and I have had a lot of growth in the last few years. And I think the biggest one is just really trying to create alignment and my walk with God.
I was going to ask you that next. What's the top priority for you now? What is it, like sold your businesses now? Are you more just trying to find closer to God, spending time with the kids? Like what is your...
Yeah. I still, one of my hobbies is building businesses, right? So I'm still building a few.
I'm trying to get smart enough to do that one day.
Yeah. I'm still building some companies right now, that I'm really focused on. And then doing the podcast is a big effort that Heston and I do together.
What made you start doing that?
Well, originally after I sold my company, I wanted to interview other founders about the roller coaster of building a business, the Roller Coaster Podcast.
And I guess it was a God coincidence. One story took it the other way and you went down a different path with it.
Yeah.
Is that how it happened?
And then things started happening and I went, wait a minute. I've missed the boat on what the actual roller coaster is. The roller coaster is everybody is going through something really challenging in their life. Every human being has something they're dealing with. And some people out there have dealt with traumas and experiences beyond our imagination. And I would consider my story that in a lot of ways, right? The way that it changed me. And so around episode 12 or 15, done, 150 episodes now, I realized that was the thing. Like I was going to start having more meaningful discussions and interviewing people who had these big stories of loss and trauma and drug abuse and incarceration and I found that the reason why our podcast has been one of the fastest growing podcasts in history, particularly short form, doing 100 million views in the first year, 280 million views in the second year, on who knows, 500 million in year 3, is because if I lost my job yesterday and I woke up today contemplating suicide because I think my life is over, and it's the third job I've lost in a year, and my wife and my kids are distraught, and I'm in debt, and that's the only answer. And I hear a story about Mark Cram, who had to bury his 13-year-old son, who tragically drowned in their pool in their backyard. And he shares that experience of how he was able to go through that experience and cope with it and get to a place where he's at today, which is beautiful and amazing. Then that gives me hope. If Mark can do it, if Brock can do it, if Lily can do it, why can't I, right? And so the podcast has become a message of hope to a world of people who are hurting.
God, I love that, man. And I was thinking the same thing, dude, because I'm not joking. I've seen some of those clips on days where I'm like, 2 kids under 2, it's a grind, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've literally been outside, like I'll go just take a break and I'm like sitting out to like constant mouth. I'm like, how did my life get to this? And granted, my kids are the best thing on earth, but like, you don't get a second to yourself. It's like, and coming from a guy that was like so single my whole life, like shot call in prison. So I've never had to answer anybody. I always done kind of whatever I wanted, even in prison, and it's like, you don't get a second to do that stuff out here by yourself. So it's like, and I've listened to some of your podcasts, and it was actually the lady where her son drowned.
Yeah.
And because that's my biggest fear, like no joke, like I have visualizations of it. I can just, for some reason, it sounds sick to even say it, but like I have visualizations so I could just see my son drowning, and it just freaks me out. Like I told my wife even earlier, we built this big nice ass pool, and I'm like, she's like, what do you think? And I'm like, to be honest, like I told you, this pool scares me. Like I kind of want to just sell this house and just get a house with no pool for a few years, just until the kids are a little bit older. Like I'm just paranoid
really
about
solid
that.
gate.
Yeah, like even I
Something.
mean I got the net and all that stuff, but it's like I don't trust. I'm just paranoid. Who knows? Someone could leave the gate open, but
Yeah.
So I've listened to one of those clips and it got me through because it's like it puts life into perspective, you know, and that's kind of what I teach in life too is perspective. Like someone's always got it worse, you know what I'm saying? If you choose to look at it like, yes, this situation did suck, but like someone just got it 10 times worse and they didn't do anything to deserve that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it wasn't self-inflicted.
Yeah,
It just
absolutely.
happened to 'em.
Yeah. All right. Goals. Like what future goals do you have? What does a guy like you set for goals now?
You know, I have.
I take it. I bet none of them are money goals.
Well, no. I mean, look, I'd be lying if I said that there's a desire to set generations of my family financially free.
For sure.
That exists, but it's low on the list.
Of course,
for sure.
It's like a byproduct of if you do what you're doing anyways.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think one of the goals with the podcast is I want to be personally known as the greatest interviewer in the world. And I believe that the bar is relatively low. And I believe that we're on our way. And I hope that you have an experience of that today when you come on my show. And the result of that, the downstream result of becoming known as the greatest interviewer in the world is that we will produce incredibly meaningful content where incredible people's stories will be heard by millions of people, which will create downstream lasting impact forever.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, that's certainly a goal. That probably means you're in the top 10 of podcasts in the world. And again, we're on our way. I would say another goal is, you know, probably the thing I think about more than anything.
Yeah.
Which is not particularly a long-term goal. It's a right now in the present moment goal is how do I set the right tone and the right example for my children day in and day out to create other God-fearing, God-following, amazing human beings in my children. Because the implications of not doing that are the biggest, right? Meaning their children and their children's children and generations to come. So I think that has the highest stakes for me in my life is making sure that I'm creating the right picture of what it's like to be a follower of Christ and an amazing human being for my children, right? Those would be, and then the, you know, generational wealth. I mean, those are probably the three that I think about the most. I want to obviously continue to strengthen and develop a relationship with God. I want to get back to a place where I'm sharing that more openly.
For sure.
With everybody that I come in contact with.
Yeah.
I've started doing that and it's felt amazing. I was on a work trip, just got back today or last night, and every Uber that I was sitting in, I would ask them about their faith. And man, you wouldn't believe just by asking somebody about their spirituality or their faith, like what that would do. And just opening up that door, I had some really meaningful conversations. So, you know, my life goal is to leave everybody better than I found them. It's to be remembered by the way that I made people feel.
I love that.
And I think if that's my legacy, then I did something right.
What are you most proud of? And I'll get you out of here on that one. Take your time because I really want to hear this from you.
The word most is complicated because there's a lot of things that I'm proud of. And I wouldn't have said that even just a few years ago. I would say it's the impact that I can have on other men. That's including one that's in this room. That's distracted on his phone, but he's in the room. That's what I'm most proud of. Yeah.
For one, we got to get you on the prison tablets too. That podcast would change so many lives to the inmates in there too, and I can connect you on the two. But thank you for this. I'm excited to do your show right now too. I hope you guys got a ton out of this. Go follow him, check it out. You have an amazing podcast. Grateful to be here today. Really, really glad we met, man. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, brother.